Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my good friend and now co-worker, the man Jeff Howe, joining us as well for Football Theory. And we have to thank our sponsor, as always. Football Theory is brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So you have any concerns or questions about real estate in the Austin area, please give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. All right, Jeff, let's get right to it. The big news this week, well, a lot of big news actually on the 40 acres. A lot of big news, but to single out just one item, Pro Day happened on the 40 acres. Both you and I were there, got a chance to witness Pro Day and some of these showcase performances. I want to talk about two guys who I think actually increased their draft stock the most at NFL Pro Day. We'll get into that. And if we have a little bit of time, I do want to hit one of the reports about really kind of an old acquisition in the coaching ranks by the Longhorns, Neal Brown. It did come out officially that he is going to be the special assistant to the head coach. I want to talk about what that means potentially for his impact and influence on the Texas offense. But let's start, Jeff, with Pro Day. The two guys I think increased their draft stock the most. I don't know if you agree or disagree, and you can obviously add on some other guys you thought maybe in this discussion, but I just thought Jaden Blue and Isaiah Bond, considering what they both did in the 40-yard dash after what they both admitted were disappointing performances somewhat at the NFL Combine, even though they both still ran sub 4.4. That's how you know you got world-class speed, when you're disappointed in your sub 4.40 at the Combine. But both those guys ran really well. Jaden Blue was clocked sub 4.3, 4.28. Some people had him in the mid 4.2s, and Isaiah Bond ended up running a 4.34, I believe, on most people's unofficial time. That, I believe, boosted both their draft stocks in a phenomenal way. We'll get to some of the details here, but what were your thoughts overall? Did you think anybody else deserved to be in that conversation? I think those two guys definitely at the top of the list.
Yeah, Jaden Blue's interesting because, before the Combine, we were hearing a lot of third-round buzz, kind of middle-round buzz for him.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and we talk about this now since this is Football Theory. You hear the teams emerging, and the team that he's kind of been tied to the most, and it's funny because he's actually got a top 30 visit with them coming up, is the Broncos. And Sean Payton has that joker role in his offense, which is kind of, the kind of all-purpose back. You need a back that's got really good hands that can play a receiver. And we know how much Sean Payton likes to mix it up with his personnel and his formations on offense. I'm not saying the Broncos are telegraphing that pick, Rod, but there's just, to me, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't think you're throwing smoke screens on third and fourth round picks like you would in the first round. So it's looking like there may be a fit there with Jaden Blue in Denver. And I think the fact that him just coming back from the injury, showing elite top end straight line speed, I don't care if it's hand times or not. If you're running sub 4.3, you're flying.
Yeah.
So I think he did help himself, but I think that's going to be more of, let's say it is the Broncos, right? That they've got a role for him potentially, and they like him in a certain spot. It may be a deal where he goes whenever they feel like now's the time where we need to go get him. If they determine that a running back, they lost Javonte Williams a free agency. I know they're kind of shuffling some things in the backfield, but if they say, all right, here's where we are with the third round pick. And this is where people kind of forget about the draft process, Rod, is like, okay, we like this guy. Can we take him now?
Yeah.
Or is he going to be there when we get to the fourth round? Because if he's not going to be there, we need to go ahead and take him now, because we don't want to lose this guy, even though people might view it as a quote unquote reach. For us, it's not, because we value him based on how we'll use him. So, again, that's just me assuming that the Broncos are going to be the pick for Jaden Blue. I agree with you 100%. Isaiah Bond's interesting because I don't know if it's a technique thing or if he just gets up the top gear faster.
He does
than a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because while he can be a guy that stretches the field, I think what the scouts are starting to realize is kind of what, looking back at his year at Texas, what was more evident. The vertical game's not really his strength. His strength is being a bubble screen hitch, get him in space type of guy. I know you're not running a ton of jet sweeps and things like that in the NFL, but basically you want to get the ball to him quick, get it in space to where he can stick a foot in the ground and get vertical and get up the field and basically be kind of like we talk about, those long handoff type situations with the perimeter passes. So I don't know, Rod, you can look at certainly some numbers in his career and say, yeah, he can be a vertical threat, but I think where he's best going to be used for somebody is really the around the line of scrimmage, short passing game, or the deep shots. I don't think it's much. There's a lot of intermediate stuff there with Isaiah Bond. I think it's either the short stuff or deep shots with him.
I agree with you. I think right now that is his game. And I think he is he probably could be an effective deep threat. I think the issues with Quinn and his inconsistency with the deep ball, may affect that too. It's part of it. But I'm with you. I think the nuance to his game has yet to be revealed, and I think that's why he's a sleeper for a lot of teams. And I think Bucky Brooks had him as in his top 5 wide receivers coming out in this draft. And a lot of teams are falling in love with that speed. And I think he actually runs routes at like that speed. I think when I watch him just running routes on air, I mean, he is moving. And to your point, I mean, at the combine, he had the second fastest max speed. If you look at his overall max speed, he was he was right behind Maxwell Hairston. If you look at overall that max speed, so he gets to his max speed about as quick as any receiver in this draft class, and that's why if you looked at his behind the line of scrimmage throws, basically the screen game you're talking about, he was deadly. He had 3 touchdowns on 10 targets, 5 other first downs. I mean, he was unbelievable. They would drop it off to, and all he needed was one good block and a sliver of daylight, and he was gone. So I think he's already showcased that. I do believe, I mean, he does have that Alabama play on film where Jalen Milroe just chunks into a deep Hail Mary style. So I think he can be a deep threat if a quarterback is more accurate on deep balls. What you're talking about, I agree. The intermediate game and his separation on some of those routes, that is something I think that when you bring him into camp, whoever drafts him, that's what you're going to be developing. Because the other stuff, I'm with you. I think deep comes natural, and when he gets the ball in his hands, just go. See green and go get it. He does that really, really well.
Yeah, I think with his draft stock, I think he would have had to have gotten in the 4.2s to get himself in the first round because the production his year at Texas just wasn't there. And, talking to him afterwards, he wasn't upset at all with his year at Texas. It's just the ankle just let him down. He just couldn't get healthy. And when he did get healthy, he couldn't stay healthy. Mm-hmm. But he did show, you look back, Rod, when he was healthy, you look back at his career at Alabama, he's got really good hands. Where the drops and the inconsistency started happening is when the injury was plaguing him. So at this point, if you really like Isaiah Bond, you're going off the good Texas tape and what he did in 2023 at Alabama, not looking at what he did while he was injured, where there were a lot more inconsistencies in his game. So if you're looking in the second round, and you're drafting a wide receiver 2, or maybe you just can take a wide receiver 3 at that point. You're just looking for best player available. Yeah, I can see where Isaiah Bond goes in the second round of this draft. He's really smooth. He's got that initial get off, just that subtle burst. Maybe the bet off the line is maybe the best out of anybody in the draft. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I say that because he's got the speed to back it up. So, and there's enough offenses now in the league that are space and pace that he'll find a home. And the interesting thing too is, does he have value as a return guy? Because he just didn't do that a ton in college. Is the league a spot where you really want to experiment with? All right, he doesn't have much of a return background, but let's go ahead and try him out. Maybe not. So I don't know that the roster, the maximization of a roster spot, in other words, maximizing depth with that spot where you say, hey, he can cover punts, kicks, he can be a return guy. I don't know that you get that with Isaiah Bond, but as long as you get the consistency with him that he's shown he can play with, I don't know that matters.
Yeah, I don't know if you get the junkyard dog you want. You got more thoroughbred and diva than you got junkyard dog. That's nothing against him, but he ain't a gunner out there. He ain't out them covering kick. But not saying he can't do it in the league. That may be what you need to do. And in the league, maybe let the coaches know, hey, I'm willing to do anything. Maybe they just didn't see him as that type of player in college. But I agree. And to our point about, I was looking at some of his stats throughout, at least compared to his peers coming out in this draft. He leads this wide receiver class in screen yardage rate. So to the point, I mean, he's already showcased that. On deep throws, though, he was only 2 of 14 this past season. And like I said, I think that's going back to more of a reflection on probably Quinn is what people are already looking at, and his inconsistency on some of those deep passes. But how about this?
What's interesting about Bond, though, and I asked him about Arch because he talked to the media afterwards. I asked him about Arch. You can tell he lit up when he was talking about Arch. His best games in the Texas uniform when Arch Manning was quarterback. So I know he was only going to be here a year, but don't think for a second, Rod, that I haven't thought, man, what would this offense look like with Isaiah Bond back for another year with Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore? Yeah. The circle of trust would be more like, hey, you guys are fighting for basically maybe 2 spots in this thing.
No, it would be prolific. No, it would be. I'm with you, brother. It would, it would add a whole nother kind of juice to the offense. It's already going to have it, trust me, but you add that dude, man, that would be scary, especially if he can stay healthy. But I agree with you on that about the Arch thing, because Arch loves the deep ball, right? I think Arch is naturally going to throw the deep ball more. We've talked about that. But one other thing about Bond, and you said it too, and I saw Bucky Brooks had him in his top 5 now post pro day, and you said he might, he could creep into the second round as a sleeper. If he goes in the second round, he would be one of 7 wide receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds since 2014 with fewer than 4 games, all right, over 100 yards from scrimmage in college.
Yeah, it was kind of feast or famine for him, because you got to think too, like his one big productive year at Bama, it took there was games Jalen Milroe didn't start early in the year. I mean, they benched Jalen Milroe, and it took them a while to figure out where they were going on offense. And then towards the end of the year, they got going. And then we just know, not just with, and actually in a weird way, the quarterback injury at Texas actually benefited him. Like I said, Isaiah Bond played better when Arch Manning was on the field than he did when Quinn Ewers was on the field. But then when Quinn the game Quinn got back against Oklahoma, that's when he got hurt. So we never really got to see what it looked like. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you really start looking at it. That's why I felt like another year would have done him good. And maybe we're talking about Isaiah Bond being a no-doubt first-round wide receiver in 2026 if he comes back.
I agree with you on that 100%. And great point about the chemistry he had naturally with Arch. But that stat I just gave you, there's 7 of those receivers that were drafted in rounds 1, or basically first 2 rounds, with fewer than 4 career games over 100 yards from scrimmage in college, and that's since 2014. 2 of those are Sark receivers. 2 of those have been at Texas the last 2 years. A.D. Mitchell is the other one. He's another one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It's because he just called touchdown passes, man. That's all A.D. Mitchell did. But yeah, now since about Sark receivers, kind of getting the Bond, and then we'll jump over to Blue real quick because I want to make some more points about him. But Sark receivers, they're exceptional outliers, and a lot of them are exceptions. Like, I'll give you another, and it's because Sark's preferences, right? He likes small, speedy receivers, but he covets a lot of speed. How about this one? Rounds, if you go look at it, if you look at round 1 wide receivers drafted in the first round to average less than 85 receiving yards per game in their best season in college since 2014. So we're talking about last 11 years, going on 12 this year. That would be 4 of those. All right. 4 of those is 10 of them. 4 of those 10 played for Sark at one point, like in a Sark offense. Wow. Xavier Worthy, Henry Ruggs, John Ross, Matthew Golden. Like but I'm saying the NFL, they overlooked it. They're like, no, we don't care about that, because they really like his receivers. They really like mostly the speed component, because something you can't coach and something all DBs fear. I'm a DB, so I can attest to that. But they're outliers, right? His receiver. I looked it up. Of the top 12 fastest wide receivers at the NFL Combine, 4 of them are Sark guys. And a lot of them end up boosting their draft stock regardless of what their production is. Hey, NFL's like, no, we don't give a damn about the production. That's world-class elite speed. We'll take it. Yeah. And so the NFL, my point is they like Sark's wide receiver preferences. And I even argued that he's kind of changed the evaluation dynamic with Devontae Smith being how small and slight he is. And now the NFL is willing to draft more of those wide receivers higher in the draft with more draft capital. But he provides a stimulus to wide receivers. That's why it's a wide receiver friendly offense. He schemes guys open really well. It engineers one-on-one matchups, and he recruits really sexy quarterbacks, and really good wide receivers want to play with big time sexy quarterbacks, especially celebrity high profile quarterbacks. And I think that also helps. So it's just symbiotic, but it works because Sark's receivers right now, man, he's starting to pump them out. It's a pipeline. And it's his receivers, like not just at Texas, going back to his time as an offensive mind, as an OC and play caller at Alabama, and then so on and so on, how he showcases these, really unique freaks at wide receiver.
Yeah, with Matt Golden, I think, the 4.29 helps. Obviously, like you said, the speed component is there. But having you're playing with Sark, knowing that in Sark's offense, you've got to learn wide receiver conceptually. You're not just, I can only do this because I was an X receiver, or I only do this because I was a Z receiver. No, you learn the route tree playing for Sark, number one. And number two, when you're looking for blemishes, and that's what scouts and coaches and GMs are doing right now. They're looking, why should we not pick this guy? What are our reasons to not take him? Well, when you're looking at Matt Golden, you look at his body of work in college and say, you know what? His two best years were his freshman year at Houston and his junior year at Texas. What did those 2 years have in common? His freshman year at Houston, he played with Clayton Tune, an NFL caliber quarterback, in a system, in a Dana Holgorsen system that's very wide receiver friendly. His junior year at Texas, he played with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, NFL caliber quarterbacks, in a system that's going to get you ready for the league, a wide receiver friendly system with Sark. What was his one bad year? On top of the fact that he was injured, he played with Donovan Smith. Not an NFL caliber quarterback, not conducive to running a wide receiver friendly offense. That season ended up getting Dana Holgorsen fired at Houston. So I think it helped Matt Golden to be with Sark to where it's like, okay, which of these two versions of Houston at Houston was Matthew Golden? Which one's the real Matthew Golden? Oh, it's the guy that played with Clayton Tune that was really productive playing with Sam Brown and the other wide receiver, Tank Dell, and the other wide receivers that Houston had that year. So I think that really helped us stop the move to Texas. And, we talked a lot about this on the channel, Rob, but it bears repeating. Texas has become the place where if you're a portal wide receiver that wants to boost your stock, Texas is the place to go. Sark is the guy to play for because he did it with A.D. Mitchell. He did it with Isaiah Bond, even in a limited role, and he's done it with Matthew Golden. Specifically, Golden and A.D. Mitchell, those guys have much better NFL stocks after playing with Sark than they did before. And it's not like Isaiah Bond really hurt his stock or killed his stock. I think he's still going to go in the second round.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, exactly. It's just that he was projected at one point to be a first rounder, probably prior to the season at Texas. And you're right. All of those guys I mentioned, those round one wide receivers since 2014 to average less than 85 receiving yards per game in their best season. 3 of those 4 and 4 of the 10 were guys that played under Sark, but 3 of the 4 had their best seasons. They were under Sark, literally playing in his system. He was calling the plays. To your point, man, he's a stimulus package. You're a wide receiver. He's gonna boost you. He's gonna give you a little something. Jaden Blue. Let's get into Jaden Blue real quick because I know we're running out of time. Jaden Blue. I mean, the report is that he ran mid 4.2s, 4.3, 4.28. I heard a 4.25 anywhere in that range. You're right. Doesn't matter if I'm saying 4.2. Who gives a damn what's after that? I mean, you're talking about blazing speed. And the freakiest thing is he said the reason that he was slow, even though he was sub 4.4, slow at the combine and ran the second fastest time for a running back, he had basically a grade 2 groin strain. That he was dealing with. Dude ran a sub 4.4 with a groin strain. Yeah, and so apparently he needed some time to heal, and I think we saw how fast he was when he completely healed. That would have been the fastest time for a running back. I mean, I've been looking at some of the Jaden Blue kind of stats compared to his peers in this running back class. Here's a few for you, Jeff. It just lets you know why. Because I asked him, I said, how many NFL teams have you met with or talked to, have reached out? And he said, damn near all 32.
Mm-hmm.
Damn near all 32. And some systems he fit better than others. You brought the Broncos. You great minds think alike, because you and Dan Jeremiah said the same thing. He was talking about Jaden Blue. A lot of people said that the San Francisco 49ers would be a really nice team. Love the outside zone. He's basically a Raheem Mostert starter kit. All right.
Yes.
And they knew how to work with Raheem Mostert. And I heard Justin Reed actually bring that up, the draft analyst for ESPN. But here's a few highlights compared to his draft class and where he sits in this class. At yards after this comes from Warren Sharp, by the way. So Sharp Analytics. So it's not even my numbers. I'll give him credit. 73% of his rush yards came after contact. That's the best in the class. Averaging yards after contact per rush, he's number 4 in the class. He's 3.8 something, so you can round it up to 4. Yards per rush when stuffed or stuffed at or behind the line of scrimmage, 3.4, number 1 in the class. His target rate for a running back, number 2 in the class. His slot rate, 16%, number 1 in the class. His target rate, I think, was 25% here. And I went and looked at some of the other numbers of him compared to others in his class. Just his 40, just looking at the testing numbers. He had the fastest 40 if we're counting the pro day. Mm-hmm. He had the 5th fastest 10-yard split, the 4th fastest max speed, 2nd fastest to 20 miles per hour. And he had the, I think, 8th fastest of the running backs to 5 yards. So this is supposed to be a historic running back class, people. It's supposed to be one of the best running back classes in the last, 10 years or so, something like that, decade plus. He's got a higher yards after contact per rush number, if you're looking at 2024, 3.8, than Quinshon Judkins, Devin Neal, or Trevor Etienne. You're looking at missed tackles forced per carry, better numbers than Henderson, Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Trevor Etienne, Omarion Hampton, Devin Neal, and some of the other really sought after and highly thought of running backs in this class. He's got some really interesting numbers analytically, and then you look at the film, and then you hear that he dealt with a high ankle sprain. He dealt with a mild shoulder injury during the season as well. And of course had to bounce back from the fumbling issues and the ball security issues, and ended up having, a hell of a close to the season, because in the college football playoffs alone, I believe he averaged 8.9 yards per touch, 12 yards per reception, had over 100 yards receiving in those college football playoff games, and he had averaged he had 166 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. I think his draft stock got boosted immensely after the pro day. I think he might be a mid-round pick potentially in a really deep running back draft. Maybe drop into the mid to late rounds, maybe 4th or 5th. Some people got him going earlier than that, but I think it's just too deep for that.
I don't think he's going to be on the board once the 5th round starts. I'd be surprised if he was. Okay. I just think somebody's going to take him. They're going to see the value. And I think the other thing that helps him too, Rod, like you mentioned with the injuries that he played through, he's got some toughness, with the speed. He's done it at Texas. He did it in his career. He's covered kicks. So you can put him on teams, and I think he'll be okay with that. And I think the fact that he stuck it out at Texas. Look, when he gets to campus, he's behind Bijan, Roshan, and Jonathan Brooks. Think about that. When we look back at that 2022 Texas team, crazy. Jaden Blue was your number 4 running back. Yeah. So we talk about deep position groups at Texas over the years. The 2022 running back room is insanely sick. And I don't even know where you could put Keelan Robinson on the depth chart, because he was kind of a boutique player, but he was there too. So really, if you think about it, based on usage, Jaden Blue was your number 5 tailback in 2022. Yeah, behind 4 guys that got drafted.
You remember that picture they took with all of them sitting on the bench? And oh man, that's gonna be an iconic photo. Somebody's gotta get them to sign that photo. Somebody's gonna do it.
Well, the good and the bad of it is now all of them, including Tashard Choice, are going to be in the league in 2025. So
right. That's how good that room was. Everybody in the league.
Exactly. But I think when teams interview him, they'll be like, why didn't you transfer? You could have hopped in the portal and been the guy in 23. You wouldn't have had to wait for CJ Baxter or Jonathan Brooks to blow a knee out for you to be the guy. And if CJ Baxter's healthy, I don't know if we see Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner have the kind of years they had if CJ Baxter's healthy in 2024. So I think there's a lot of intangible stuff that I think he's got potentially has working for him as he goes through this process.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree with that too. And all he's got to get cleaned up is he's got to get the ball his ball security in his hands, right? And he's got small hands, something that tested out. That's a concern. I've heard people talking about that. And of course, we saw that play out at Texas, but he battled back and showed that he can overcome adversity. So that's an issue. I think he had 5 fumbles when it was all said and done. 5 drops, I believe.
It's too many. It was too
many. And one thing, and I was trying to see where his broad jump was, and I don't know if he broad jumped, but he didn't have a great vertical. And one of the other issues, I think the criticisms or critiques of his overall game skill set evaluation is that he doesn't have great lower body strength to be an interior runner.
I think he said his broad jump was 10.4.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wonder, that's one of the things they wondered, like, because he didn't do those things at the combine. At the pro day, I'm not sure that he had, great numbers in those 2 areas. So that's another thing that people are concerned about. But I think all that is put to rest if you use them the right way. And pass pro with a running back like Jaden Blue, pass pro is always a concern.
Yeah.
So,
I'll say this too while we wrap it up, man. Shout out when you have 6 head coaches, 6 GMs, over 120 scouts, coaches, and executives at pro day. It's the most well-attended pro day. It's the most significant pro day since I've been on the beat. And that, you think back to Sark's first pro day, there was not a single head coach, GM, or coordinator that showed up for that pro day. Yeah. It just shows you how far things have come with a lot of eyes. And shout out to Gavin Holmes and Silas Bolden. I mean, I heard one of Silas Bolden's reps tell him straight up after he was catching punts. Mike Vrabel went outside to watch Silas Bolden catch punts. And I heard one of his reps tell him, hey, man, the Patriots are really interested. And they're not the only team. But the last guy that I heard that at a Texas Pro Day was say, hey, man, the Patriots really like you. The last guy I overheard that conversation with was Brendan Schooler, who's now an all-pro special teamer in New England. And, Vrabel follows that Belichick model, so just file that away with Silas Bolden. But shout out to both those guys, man, especially Gavin Holmes. Rod, we were watching Gavin Holmes do some of the drills and stuff on Tuesday, and both those guys have gotten themselves – I don't think I'm over-exaggerating when I say this. I think they're both squarely in that priority free agent mix. I think there's teams now that be like, hey, we got to have a contract ready for this guy the second the draft's over.
No, I'm glad you brought him up because Gavin Holmes, what did he run, a 4.38, I believe it was, somewhere around there. No, he looked really good. The vertical was it 37?
39.
39. Oh, sorry. My bad. Those 2 inches, that's everything. No, he looked phenomenal. And I said he's going to force a couple of scouts to go back to the film. And his film as a coverage guy, honestly, in terms of just coverage snaps, he was probably more consistent in coverage than Malik Muhammad. Jade was probably the one that was probably more in terms of the corners and nickels. He was probably the second most consistent coverage guy when he was out there, man. He was sticky. He was sticky in coverage. So for him to test that well, people might go back to some of his film. That'd be a guy that you can look at as an undrafted free agent. It's a tough road, but I think he would have a shot. And Silas Bolden, he's small, but Silas Bolden is a junkyard dog we were talking about that Isaiah Bunn ain't. And he was like, I'll do anything. Gunner, punt return, kick return, covered kicks. He's small, but he's willing to do any damn thing. Didn't he die for one of those?
You and I were standing next to each other watching when he did that. Yeah.
And everybody was like, ooh. And you know what, Jeff? He was doing that. Remember we saw him at the first time we saw him when he was available was that last spring?
It was in camp. It was in camp.
Sorry, yes, right. It was in camp. Thank you very much. It was in camp. And he was the one that turned heads in camp. Like everybody kept talking about how Silas Bolden was a guy that played bigger than his size and had made big plays, and which I can attest, all of those things were true. So he does turn heads, man, in practice. It's a Spud Webb effect to him where he looks really small. So you think, man, he ain't gonna go out there. Man, first of all, you look at him because you're like, why is this guy that small playing at this level? Yeah. And then you can't help but watch him because you can't help but watch him. You go, damn, he can hold his own. He's making plays. That Spud Webb factor is going to help him in camp potentially. if he gets in one, and I think he will.
He ran an in-breaking route where, Quinn threw it in the right spot, but Silas hit another gear and reached out and just like snagged it with his hands and got up the field. And that's when I looked at you and said, Rod, he's gonna be one of those guys that gets into camp, and it's going to be really hard for a team to cut him.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. All right,
there are going to be guys, there'll be coaches and guys in that room. They're like, no, man, we like Bolden too much. We can't risk losing him on waivers. We got to keep him around.
It's going to be one of those guys they keep bringing back. They cut him and they bring him back again. Cut him, bring him back again. Oh, just trying to find the numbers. No, I'm with you, man. I think he's one of those guys that they don't, he'll make plays in the preseason. They'll give him a lot of chance to make plays in the season, and he'll have some good film out there that way. So, all right, I said we'd get to Neal Brown, but we'll do that next week. Him giving the official title of special assistant to the head coach. We'll talk about what that means next week. So that's a little sneak peek. Before we get done, let's thank Laura Baker once again. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams. They can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Please give her a shout today. If you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in Austin, 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to Laura and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Thank you very much, Jeff, as well. Appreciate all of the nuggets, and always feel like a smarter football theorist after talking to you. Thank you to all of you guys out there for watching and for listening. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, and for Jeff and for Matthew. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.